everyone. Welcome to Chetan Bharat Learning and welcome back to your weekly current affairs series in which we'll cover all the important developments with respect to the field of science and technology for your UPSC preparation. Now the science and technology related current affairs that we are going to cover in this video would be from 15th of September to 21st of September. Alright, so without further ado, let's take a look at the issues that we are going to discuss in today's video. Issues that were important in the past week. Issues to be covered. First of all, we'll discuss solar cycle number 25. Many scientists have recently revealed that solar cycle number 25 has started and it is going to be for 11 years. So we'll talk about what solar cycle is, how long it stays, and what's the period of that cycle, and why is it significant for people on Earth? Why is it significant for us Earthlings? Alright, so solar cycle number 25. Then we'll talk about various space missions sent on Venus. As you guys all know that the spotlight is on Venus now because of the discovery of phosphine gas on Venus. Many scientists and many researchers are saying that maybe in the upper layers of Venusian atmosphere life is possible. There is life because of the recent discovery of phosphine gas. Now, because of that there is spotlight on Venus, and because of that we have to discover all the other things that are related to Venus. Alright, now as you guys all know, as I have said this before also, that UPSC has this tendency of asking questions related to the main topic of the news. So the main topic of the news these days is Venus. So we need to know related news. Okay, we need to know other things about Venus. In today's video, we won't talk about phosphine because we have discussed the issue of phosphine in the previous lecture. Today we'll talk about various scientific space missions sent to Venus, and in particular we are going to discuss the space mission that is going to be sent by India on Venus. Okay, that's called Shukrayaan, by the way, but we'll discuss about that. Then we'll jump to Department of Science and Technology Inspire Awards. As many of you might know that DST, Department of Science and Technology, had recently launched Inspire program. Now under that Inspire program, Department of Science and Technology has handed over certain awards to students. So recently some awards were given to students, Inspire awards were given to students, and we'll therefore this Inspire scheme is in the news. So we'll talk about Inspire scheme as well as these awards. Then we'll talk about groundbreaking inventions in ICT. ICT stands for Information and Communication Technology. So there were two articles in Hindu that actually discuss the groundbreaking inventions in the field of information and communication technology. Computer science, basically. So we'll talk about that because it is very important for your prelims as well as mains. And in the end, like always, we'll talk about COVID-19 updates, certain important articles related to COVID-19. Today we are going to focus on vaccine development, especially the Russian vaccine, Sputnik 5. We'll talk about that. Okay, so without further ado, let's start with first issue, that is solar cycle number 25. Now, the article related to solar cycle number 25 came in Indian Express's Explain series. It was titled Solar Cycle 25, the scientific community's forecast about its intensity and peak. Alright, now let's take a look at the headlines, or the headline for this news. NASA, as you all know what NASA is, and National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration of America, NOAA, jointly released a consensus statement announcing the commencement of solar cycle number 25. Now, what does this statement mean? Solar cycle number 25. That means 24 solar cycles have happened in the past and a new cycle is underway, which is the 25th cycle, and that is why we call it solar cycle number 25. Before this cycle, 24 cycles, solar cycles have happened. Okay, now what is solar cycle? You see, like seasons on Earth, our star, our solar system, the main star of our solar system, the sun, also goes through periodic phases. Okay, like Earth goes through seasons, sun goes through cycles, and these cycles are known as solar cycles. Okay, now each solar cycle lasts for 11 years. What happens is that at the beginning of the solar cycle, at the beginning of any solar cycle, solar activities on sun are at their minimum. This phase is known as solar minima. Then, after some time, these solar activities reach a maximum. This is known as solar maxima. So when any solar cycle begins, solar activities are their minimum. Then solar activities increase and they reach a maximum point, which is known as solar maxima. And after attaining solar maxima, solar activities again start to decline and they again reach a minima. This entire cycle from minima to maxima to back to minima takes around 11 years. Okay, and when it gets finished, then another solar cycle starts. Okay, so solar cycles go like this. Each cycle is for 11 years, approximately 11 years. So minima, maxima, minima, then a new cycle begins. Minima, maxima, minima. So currently scientists, especially the scientists of NASA and NOAA, have revealed that a new solar cycle has commenced. Okay, back in the previous solar cycle, which was solar cycle number 24, started in December 2008 and it got finished and it ended in December 2019. Now scientists have said that solar cycle number 25 has begun its path, has begun its journey. Okay, now what is solar cycle? Now you have a brief idea about solar cycle. It takes 11 years and what happens is minima, maxima, minima. You know about that. But what are these solar activities that I'm talking about? What are these solar activities? I'm telling you that solar activities are at their minimum, then they reach their maximum, then they reach their minimum. But what are these solar activities? Okay, so to know about that, you need to take a look at the diagram of sun. You need to know about the layers of sun. Okay, now this is the diagram that I have taken from NASA's website. Now this diagram actually, or this photo actually shows the different layers that our sun is made up of. Okay, the innermost layer is called core. Now core is the place where this star, our sun, produces energy. Okay, every star, each and every star in the universe has a core, and in that core energy is produced and that energy gets transferred to the outer layers. Okay, so the main area where a star's energy is produced is the core. Now as you guys all know, all stars produce energy through nuclear fusion. And we have talked about nuclear fusion in the previous science and technology videos. Okay, so every star produces energy through nuclear fusion, and these nuclear fusion reactions happen in a star's core. Our sun is no different because it is a star also. It is a star. All right. So our sun produces energy and that energy is produced in our sun's core. Okay. Now the layer that is outside the core is known as the radiative zone. It is the place where the energy produced in the sun's core gets transferred to the outer layers through radiations. Okay. Then after radiative zone, there is this another layer called convective zone or convection zone. Here the heat energy is transmitted to the outer layers through convection. As you guys all know, heat is transferred through three ways: conduction, convection, and radiation. Okay, heat energy gets transferred from one place to another through these three ways. Okay, now from inner core, from core to outer layers, first through radiations, heat is transferred to the outer layers, then through convection currents, heat is transferred to the outer layers. Okay, now after this core, radiative zone, convection zone, we get another layer called subsurface flows. Okay, it's a very insignificant layer. We don't need to talk much about it. Then after that, another important layer comes, which is called the photosphere. Now photosphere is very important because this is the layer that is visible to us. The sun we see, we actually are able to see the photosphere. Okay, all right. Now outside photosphere is another layer called chromosphere. Now this chromosphere is mostly made up of magnetic field. It is magnetic layer covering the photosphere. Okay, so this magnetic layer, it is not, this chromosphere is not opaque. You can see through this layer, and that is why photosphere is visible to us. All right. Anyway, chromosphere is the magnetic layer that surrounds the photosphere. Okay, and outside this chromosphere, outside these layers is sun's atmosphere, which is known as corona. Now, corona word is used for other things as well. It is a beverage. It is a disease also now. But corona is used from the point of view of sun also. And this corona is nothing but sun's atmosphere. Now, this entire corona is made up of plasma. What is plasma? Do you know that there are 3 states of matter? Solid, liquid, gas. Matter in our universe is made, it can be of 3 states, okay? Either of the 3 states. Matter can either be solid, matter can either be liquid, matter can either be gas. But that's not true. I mean, that's an incomplete picture. Matter can be of 4 types, and the 4th type is plasma. So there are 4 states of matter: solid, liquid, gas, and plasma. Our sun's corona is made up of plasma. Now, this is sun's atmosphere, and it extends millions of kilometers outside the sun. Sun's corona is also visible to us. It's the rays that are radiating out of the sun that we can see from Earth. If you will try to, I don't know if you guys have ever tried to watch a solar eclipse through specialized goggles, but if you can see, if you have seen pictures of sun, then you can see certain liquid-like thing or fluid-like thing radiating outwards, right? The rays of sun. Okay. Now these rays of sun are nothing but corona. Corona extend out from sun, millions of kilometers out from sun. Okay. Now this is known as corona. All right. Makes sense? Now, from the point of view of this news, from the point of view of understanding solar cycle, now you will understand, we need to understand what sunspot activity is. Okay. You see, when I told you about solar cycle, I told you that when a solar cycle goes like this, there is a minima, there is a maxima, and then there is a minima again. What is this minima? When solar activities are at their minimum. What is this maxima? When solar activities are at their maximum. What is this minima again? When solar activities are at their minimum again. Now, what are these solar activities? What do I mean by solar activities? You see, on the photosphere, there are certain black spots that are visible from telescopes, okay? On photosphere, these black spots appear. These black spots are known as sunspots. Okay, now what are these sunspots? These sunspots are comparatively cooler regions on sun. Okay, so they appear black because they are relatively cooler than the surrounding regions. Okay, now these sunspots are highly magnetically charged. I mean, they have they show high magnetic activity, high magnetic field, and highly magnetically charged. Okay, now these sunspots appear in pairs. Whenever you spot a sunspot, you'll see one bigger circle, one big circle, and one small circle. Okay. All right. So these sunspots appear in pairs. Then there will be another sunspot, and these sunspots appear in pairs. The bigger spot is known as umbra, and the smaller spot is known as penumbra. All right. Now, when solar activity is at its maximum, sunspot activity is at its maximum. What do they mean by solar activity? Solar activity is nothing but sunspot activity. When you see a lot of sunspots, when you are able to see many sunspots on sun's photosphere, then you say that solar activity is at its maximum. When you don't see many sunspots, when you see only few sunspots, then you say solar activity is slowing down or solar activity is low. So when solar activity is high, sunspot activity is high. Okay, so solar activity is nothing but sunspot activity. When you can spot many sunspots on sun's surface, then solar activity is extremely high. When you can't find many sunspots, when you can find only a few sunspots on sun's photosphere, then you say solar activity is at its minimum. Okay, now the main thing about sunspot activity is when sunspots are high in number, whenever sunspots appear on sun's surface, solar flares get emitted out. Now, what are solar flares? Our sun emits highly charged particles outside. Okay, our sun actually spits out highly charged electrons, protons surrounded in plasma outside in the universe. And these these highly charged particles are known as solar flares, or solar wind also sometimes. Now these solar flares are emitted by sun in the universe, outside the universe, and they contain plasma and highly charged protons and electrons. Now these solar flares actually hit different planets. It actually reaches our sun also. Now these solar flares are very dangerous. Okay, if any human being comes in their way, that human being can get destroyed. If any machine gets in their way, that machine gets destroyed. If any Mangalyaan, Chandrayaan gets in their way, then that particular spacecraft gets destroyed. So they are very dangerous. But if they're that dangerous, and if they hit Earth and other planets constantly, then why aren't we getting impacted by this? If solar flares are hitting Earth constantly and periodically, then why don't we see its impact? If it's that dangerous, then why don't we see that danger around? You see, what happens is that Earth too has its magnetic field. I'll make a rough diagram of Earth. Let's suppose this is Earth. Now Earth has its North Pole, magnetic North Pole, and magnetic South Pole. Now because we have a magnetic North Pole and South Pole, Earth has its own magnetic field also. This is Earth's magnetic field, emitting from North Pole and entering South Pole. Okay, now whenever solar flare comes and hits Earth, this magnetic field blocks solar flares. So these solar flares, while coming to Earth, are actually deflected through this magnetic field of Earth. So whenever a solar flare is coming towards Earth, it gets deflected. Okay, so that is why solar flares don't reach the inner layers of our atmosphere. Okay, but what happens is that our magnetic field leaves a gap here in the North Pole and South Pole. So some solar flares enter these areas. In the southern region, the southern polar region, and the northern polar region. Okay, it enters, and we can see these. We can witness this phenomena as bright, shining lights in the sky. Arctic countries like Norway, Sweden, or Finland can watch these bright, shiny, bluish, greenish lights. Okay, in the sky. These lights are the reason, or the source of these lights are these solar flares. These solar flares actually enter the Earth's atmosphere at these polar regions, and they appear in the sky as bright, shiny lights. They don't reach the surface of the Earth. They just appear in the sky. Now, these bright, shiny lights that we see in North Pole and South Pole are known as aurora. So aurora seen in the North Pole are known as aurora borealis, and aurora seen in the South Pole is known as aurora australis. Okay, so that is why other areas of the equatorial regions or temperate regions do not witness aurora. Only polar regions witness aurora lights, bright shiny lights in the sky. Anyway, now the inner layers of Earth's atmosphere, or the people living on the Earth, do not get impacted by solar flares because this magnetic field repels or deflects solar flares. But what about satellites? Satellites are actually outside this magnetic field, and they are revolving around the Earth. Now, whenever a solar flare comes, it can impact that satellite. It can destroy that satellite. What about Chandrayaan? What if Chandrayaan was going from Earth to Moon, and in its journey on the way to Moon, it gets affected or it gets impacted by a solar flare? Had that happened, Chandrayaan would have never reached Moon. Okay, solar flares are that dangerous. Make sense? Now, solar flares increase. I mean, the frequency of solar flare increases, or it's directly proportional to sunspot activity. Whenever you see higher number of sunspots on the sun's surface, you'll witness an increase in the solar activity, or you'll witness an increase in the solar flares. And whenever sunspot activity is low, solar flares would reduce in frequency. Make sense? Okay. So sunspot activity, or knowledge about sunspot activity, is important for us to understand space weather. If we are able to predict when a solar flare would come, or when a solar flare would reach Earth, or the frequency of solar flares, if we are able to understand that, then we'll be able to predict space weather. And if we are able to predict, say, space weather, then we can predict our spacecrafts, our satellites, our astronauts roaming around in the space. Okay, we can do all of that. Anyway, now let's come back to the news. What is solar cycle? Sun follows a cycle of 11 years. during which sunspot activity fluctuates between solar minima, when you have very low solar flares and very low number of sunspots, and solar maxima. What are sunspots? These are small and dark yet cooler areas formed on the solar surface where there are strong magnetic forces. Okay, then next, a new cycle commences when sun has reached its lowest possible minima phase. When sun reaches back to its lowest possible sunspot activity, then that means that the cycle has ended and a new cycle is about to begin. Okay, every time the cycle changes, sun's magnetic poles reverse. Now, like our earth, even sun has a north pole and south pole. It has a magnet and a magnetic field. Whenever a solar cycle ends, sun's magnetic poles reverse. North pole goes in the place of south pole and south pole goes in the place of north pole. All right? Okay. Now, a solar cycle prediction panel comprising of solar physicists led by NASA and NOAA along with an international community release a consensus statement once every decade. So who can announce, which authority can announce that a new solar cycle has begun? This is the authority that has the power to announce. Okay, it's the job of this authority to announce whether a solar cycle has ended or a new cycle has begun. Traditionally, telescopes were used to record sunspots, and recorded data since 1755 is available. On this basis, scientists announced that the completion of solar cycle 24, which lasted between December 2008 to December 2019, has ended, with sun's activities having reached its lowest minima. Between the two cycles, the new solar cycle 25 has now commenced. Yeah, one more thing. Now, of all the solar cycles that have happened in the past, they say that solar cycle 24 was one of the weakest. That means sunspot activity was quite weak. Even during the maxima phase, sunspot activity during solar cycle 24 was quite weak as compared to other previous cycles. Now, they say that solar cycle number 25 would be as weak as solar cycle 24. That means solar cycle 25 won't be a strong solar cycle, it will be a weak solar cycle in intensity. The panel termed solar cycle 25 to be a weak one with intensity similar to that of solar cycle 24. Alright? Okay? So yeah. Now let's take a look at impact on Earth. Why are we studying this so precisely? Why are we studying sun so precisely? Why is so much focus being shifted to? Why are we focusing so much on solar cycles? Why are solar cycles important for us? For that, we need to understand the impact of solar flares or solar cycles on Earth. All right. So impact on Earth. Increase in solar activity would lead to the following. Solar flares would increase. You know what solar flares are? Solar energetic particles, these are nothing but solar flares. High speed solar wind, again, these are made up of the same stuff. Solar wind, solar flares are nothing but highly charged and energetic and of very high speed particles like electrons and protons roaming around in plasma. Okay, that's what solar flares are. And coronal mass ejection. Now, as far as the composition of the material is concerned, there is no difference between all four of them. Coronal mass ejection and solar flares are same. The only difference between solar flares and coronal mass ejection is that solar flares emerge in the photosphere and then they get emitted out. Coronal mass ejection, like the name suggests, are sourced from sun's corona. Solar flares originate in sun's photosphere. Coronal mass ejections emerge from sun's corona. Okay. Now, when solar activity increases, these increase, and when these increase, they affect space weather and space dependent operations like GPS. Now we get GPS service because there are 24 satellites, okay, that actually indicate the precise location of any object and the time also. So GPS service gets impacted because GPS service we are getting the service because of the satellites that are revolving around the Earth. Then radio and satellite communication can be damaged because of these solar flares. Besides hampering flight operations, space exploration programs, right? Space exploration programs also get hampered. For example, you can't launch a long-term interplanetary spacecraft if there are chances that it's going to be hit by a solar flare. Because if you send Mangalyaan to Mars and a solar flare comes in between, then that Mangalyaan, your spacecraft would never reach Mars. It will get destroyed in the way. Okay, so that is why. Then, better prediction of space weather helps us to remain prepared predict, and plan mitigation measures ahead of a space exploration, right? So as to build suitable hardware and critical system. Clear? So if we are able to predict space weather, if we are able to predict solar flares or coronal mass ejections, then we'll be able to plan our space exploration or space related operations better. Okay? Right? And the last 2 points also are a kind of an elaboration on this point only. The last 2 points are actually, they're explaining this point in detail. Okay, so we won't get into this. You can read it in your notes, these 2 points. Okay, so yeah, now we are done with our first issue. Now let's jump to Mission Venus, Shukrayaan 1. As you guys all know that in Indian astrology, Venus is called Shukra. So Shukrayaan would be India's mission to Venus. Now India is about to launch its mission to Venus in 2023. And why are we studying Mission Venus? Because as you guys all know, like I told you told you this just before the beginning, like I told you that the spotlight is on Venus again, and because of that, other news related to Venus can be asked by UPSC. Okay, so we will talk about Shukrayaan and certain other missions that are sent by other space agencies or might be sent by other space agencies to Venus. Now, Government of India, especially ISRO, is planning to send a spacecraft, orbiter spacecraft to Venus in 2023. Okay, so this spacecraft would be launched by ISRO, and the launch vehicle that will be used by ISRO to launch Shukrayaan would be GSLV Mark III. Okay, you know, Chandrayaan 1, Mangalyaan 1 were sent by PSLV, but Chandrayaan 2 was sent by GSLV Mark III. Okay, the mission was not a success, it was a failure. So there is no successful space exploration that has happened using GSLV Mark III. But we believe that Mangalyaan 2, that is also in the pipeline, and Shukrayaan would be successful, and they'll be launched through this vehicle, GSLV Mark III. This is a better rocket than PSLV. Why? Because PSLV cannot carry heavy payloads. Okay, GSLV can carry heavy payloads. They can carry payloads up to 8 tons also. Okay, so GSLV is a better rocket because you can send more and heavy and complex instruments, scientific instruments aboard your spacecraft if you utilize this launch vehicle. Okay, so let's talk a bit more about Shukrayaan 1 that is planned in 2023. It is a proposed orbiter. Orbiter means that this spacecraft will revolve around Venus by Indian Space Research Organization to study the surface and atmosphere of Venus in 2023. Based on the success of Chandrayaan and Mangalyaan, ISRO has been studying the feasibility of future interplanetary missions to Venus and Mars. Okay, because ISRO got a huge boost after the success of Chandrayaan 1 and Mangalyaan 1. Okay, so that is why ISRO has become quite ambitious, and it is planning to send more missions to other planets, including Venus. Plus, it has gained some experience also studying about Venus after collaborating with Japanese Space Agency. Okay, from 2016 to 17, ISRO collaborated with JAXA. JAXA is Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency. This is Japanese Space Agency, JAXA, to study Venusian atmosphere using signals from Akatsuki. You see, JAXA had sent a mission to Venus. The name of the mission was Akatsuki. Now the data released or the data sent back home by this spacecraft Akatsuki is being analyzed by JAXA, and JAXA is collaborating with ISRO to interpret and understand that data. Alright? Now, if we are successfully able to send Shukrayaan to Venus, then what would be our scientific objectives? Okay? Broad research areas of interest for this mission: surface, subsurface features and resurfacing processes. Then, apart from the surface, we want to study Venusian atmosphere, Venusian atmospheric chemistry, dynamics and compositional variations. Then in some parts of the atmosphere there you can see more carbon dioxide. In some parts of the atmosphere you will see more sulfur dioxide. So we will also study composition of Venusian atmosphere. And in the end we'll talk about atmospheric interaction with solar wind and solar radiation. We know about Earth. We know how Earth or Earth's magnetic field interacts with solar flares. We want to study how Venus's magnetic field or Venus's atmosphere interacts with solar flares or solar winds. Okay. Now, what I would want is that I'll tell you a few missions by other space agencies that have been sent to Venus. Okay, you already know about Akatsuki. Akatsuki is a mission that was sent by JAXA to Venus. Then Roscosmos, Russian space agency, has sent Venera. Now, back in Soviet days also they were sending this mission. You can see like Venera 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So Venera has many variants. Venera 1, way back in 1980s, they started with Venera 1 and now they're on Venera 15. Some Veneras were successful, some missions weren't. Okay. Anyway, you know about Venera, which was sent by Roscosmos. Then what I would like from you is, I've told you about JAXA's Akatsuki, Roscosmos's Venera. Now it's your job. Go back and check the browse on the internet the names of other Venusian missions, the names of other missions sent on Venus by NASA and European Space Agency. So write down or note down or check out missions sent on Venus by NASA and missions sent on Venus by ESA. This is your homework. This thing will be done by you. I won't tell you, you'll do it. All right? Because I'm going to ask questions about that in the coming test also. Okay? So it's your job now to find out the names of the missions sent by NASA and names of the missions sent by ESA, European Space Agency. Anyway, now we are done with the second issue, that is different missions sent on Venus. Now let's get back to the third topic of our discussion today is DSTs Inspire Awards. Now the news related to these awards was mentioned in, Rajya Sabha TV's weekly show called Science Monitor. Okay, so every week on Saturdays this show appears. You can watch it on YouTube, or if you have television sets, then, and if you see television these days, because these days people don't watch television anymore, they are hooked on Netflix or Amazon for that matter. Anyway, if you do watch channels on TV, then there is this channel called Rajya Sabha TV. Every week on Saturdays you get to watch Science Monitor. Okay, so this news about Inspire scheme or Inspire Awards appeared in this week's like previous Saturday's Science Monitor. Now, Science Monitor actually talked about Inspire Awards and it discussed in brief about the DST's, Department of Science and Technology's Inspire program. Okay, but what I did was I Googled Inspire program by the government and I reached Government of India's Department of Science and Technology's website. So this information that I'm going to provide you in your notes about Inspire program and Inspire Awards would be sourced from these two areas, Science Monitor and the official website of Department of Science and Technology. Alright, now let's talk about Inspire programs and what are these awards all about. About Inspire program. The full form of Inspire program is Innovation in Science Pursuit for Inspired Research. Alright, now government launched this program to motivate young students to take up careers in the field of science. Government actually wants that people, our young students should be more interested in the fields in science and technology. If more and more youth takes up careers or takes up projects related to science and technology, then India would create a human resources pool of scientists, researchers and innovators. Okay, at this current moment, India has a paucity of properly skilled scientists, properly skilled researchers. All right. So what India wants is, what Government of India has decided, that we should nurture young talent. We should inspire people to take up science and technology. We should motivate young students. We should motivate their creative side also, so that they can become future scientists and all. So the main aim of Inspire program was to motivate young students to take up projects related to science and technology. Okay, Inspire is an innovative program sponsored and managed by DST for attraction of talent to science. Okay, the basic objectives of Inspire is to communicate to the youth of the country the excitements of the creative pursuits of science. Many students in our country, many young students in our country find science boring. Main job of this program is to make science interesting to these students. Okay, attract talent to the study of science at an early age and thus build the required critical human resource pool for strengthening and expanding science and technology system and R&D, that is research and development base. All right. Third point is not that significant, but I would want you guys to read it. Okay, it will be mentioned in your notes. Every year, about 1,000 students are availing Inspire Fellowship for pursuing PhD degree. Okay, this Inspire program is providing scholarships to young students. Talented students are being provided scholarships. Now, this news was about, the news that appeared in Science Monitor was about Inspire Awards. Now, students who are students who are in class 6, class 7, class 8, class 9 or class 10, from class 6 to class 10, these young students are actually motivated to send applications about new scientific ideas for solving current problems that face mankind. Okay, so what Government of India does is, what Department of Science and Technology does is, that it invites applications from students from class 6 to class 10th to provide solutions, scientific solutions to contemporary problems that mankind or humanity in general is facing. All right, students send their applications, and on the basis of their applications, how creative they are, how scientific they are, Department of Science and Technology gives them awards. Those awards are called Inspire Awards. Okay, these awards were in the news. Okay, close to 42,000 young students of class 6 to 10th receive Inspire Award Manak. The name of the award is Manak. Million Minds Augmenting National Aspiration and Knowledge per year. Okay, so this thing was in the news. But I have given you facts about other aspects. I have given you facts about the other things related to Inspire program as well. Inspire provides scholarships. Inspire provides PhD level scholarships. Inspire provides internship camps also. It provides internship to students also. It provides fellowship or scholarships to students who want to pursue BSc or MSc degree in science and all that stuff. Okay, so this is all about Inspire program. Okay, now let's move on to the next issue that we need to talk about. Groundbreaking invention in the field of ICT. ICT stands for Information and Communication Technology. All right. Now, you see, there was this professor of computer science in IIT Kanpur. He wrote a book recently. Okay, the name of the book is Groundbreaking Inventions in Information and Communication Technology by Professor V. Rajaraman. Okay, the name of the professor is V. Rajaraman. Now, he points out, or he lists out, 5 major inventions that have transformed the field of computer science. You know, back in the old days, computer was considered to be this big machine that required a lot of space. Now, computers can be held, or computers are in every man's pocket, every woman's pocket. So computers used to be these huge devices, and now computers are these handheld mobile devices. Your smartphone is as good as a computer. All right. So how have computers evolved from such big and complicated machines that were only used by engineers to these small machines that can be used by a layman also? Now, the journey from these big sized machines to these small but efficient machines that can be utilized by a layman also, the journey is a revolutionary one, and this journey involves 15 major discoveries or 15 major innovations. Without these 15 innovations and those innovators who invented these inventions, without these 15 inventions, this journey wouldn't have been possible. These smartphones wouldn't have been possible. Okay, back in the old days, in 1960s or 70s, computers were big and they weren't able to perform complicated tasks. They could only perform simple tasks. But now, these small smartphones, these computers can perform complicated tasks as well. Plus, they can be used by laymen. A person need not be a computer science engineer to use a computer anymore. Back in the day, it used to be the case. Okay, so what are these 15 groundbreaking inventions that revolutionized the field of computer science and information and communication technology in particular? Now, these 15 groundbreaking inventions, all of these 15 groundbreaking inventions are mentioned in Professor V. Rajaraman's book. Now, this article that appeared in the Hindu actually mentions or names these inventions. Inventions. All right, so we'll take a look at these 15 inventions as they were mentioned in this article. We need not get into the detail of these inventions because the detail would be found in Professor V. Rajaraman's book. You need not read Professor V. Rajaraman's book. You need not do that. You just need to know about the invention and the inventor who invented it. Okay, so let's take a look at the 15 inventions that Professor V. Rajaraman has mentioned. Number one invention was Fortran. Formula translation. It was created by John Backus and his team in 1957. This was a language that made it possible for programmers to program computers. You see, any computer or electronic device understands binary language of bits, 0, 1, or a combination of zeros and ones. Now, we humans don't understand the combination of 0 and 1. So Fortran was a language through which a human language can be translated into binary language. So what happened is the current languages like C, C++, Java and all these computer science languages, all these languages borrow words from English language, right? For, loop, and right, all these things, brackets, ampersand and all that stuff. Okay, now how to translate these English language things, this language into 0, 1, the language that is understood by computers? Well, that breakthrough was done by Fortran. Fortran was a programming language that could be used to give instructions to computer, and this actually revolutionized the field of computer science. That was back in 1957. Then integrated circuits or ICs were developed by John Bardeen. John Bardeen actually developed integrated circuits. Earlier, if you want to convey information to a computer, or you want to feed the information of 0 or 1, you required vacuum tubes. A signal, 0 signal or 1 signal was sent through these vacuum tubes. Now these vacuum tubes used to get heated up after running for quite some time. Okay, they used to get heated up and they used to consume a lot of energy. Clear? So that is why your computer used to get heat up and you couldn't use computer for longer periods of time. But after the discovery of ICs, integrated circuits, and another person, Jack Kilby, actually built upon these ICs and created an integrated circuit on a single silicon chip. What happened was the space that was used by computers, they used to occupy large spaces. That shrunk. Plus, energy consumption of computers also reduced. Okay, so this was a revolutionary step. Then, relational database management. How data that is fed into a computer is managed properly. You remember back in the day, only like, for example, 500 KB of data could be stored in a floppy disk. Right? Then CDs came, then DVDs came, then big Blu-ray discs came, then came pen drive, in which you can store 60 GB of data in this small space. Okay, all of this happened through database management system. Then LANs were introduced, local area network. It was introduced by Norman Abraham's group in Hawaii, and someone modified the protocol that was required in LANs and made Ethernet. The name of the person is also given, Robert Metcalfe. Then Steve Wozniak, partner of Steve Jobs at Apple, created a personal computer. Earlier, computers were only used by scientists, researchers, and engineers. But Steve Wozniak was able to create a personal computer that would be used by a layman also. Okay, so Steve Wozniak should be given credit for this. And Steve Wozniak partnered with Steve Jobs, and Steve Jobs was able to sell these computers. Okay, he created Apple. Then eventually IBM got into the business also. So Apple and IBM were creating computers, and Microsoft actually provided operating system for these personal computers. So all these three big tech giants emerged through this invention of Steve Wozniak. Then emerged cryptography. Then computer graphics emerged. You see, you can see the mouse pointer, you can see movies, you can see graphics on computer. That was very important for making computer interactive. A layman couldn't have used computer had the computer not been that interactive, had the computer been made up of just programming language screens. Okay, but computer graphics actually made it possible for any layman to play video games on computer, to do all sorts of stuff on computer. Okay, then development of internet revolutionized the field of information technology. Then came GPS, global positioning system. Then World Wide Web through which you can browse on internet, you can visit different websites. That happened. After the internet, World Wide Web was discovered, or invented. Then there were different websites on computer, but how do you search a particular website? For that, you need to know its domain name. But there were two people who created Google, by the way, Larry Page and Sergey Brin. They made a search engine that made it possible for you to type. You don't need to know the domain name. You can just type anything related to that website and that website would appear. Right? So search engine was then created by people who created Google, Larry Page and Sergey Brin. Then digitization and compression of multimedia, how big chunks of heavy movies that require a lot of memory space, like 8 GB memories, 10 GB movies can be compressed and sent across the internet on WhatsApp also even. Then mobile computing, Wi-Fi, smartphones, then cloud computing, and now we have reached the phase of deep learning. Deep learning is related to artificial intelligence. Back in the day, computers couldn't even do a simple task. Now, computers are that capable of taking human-like decisions. Computers are capable of taking even human-like decisions. So we have reached the stage of artificial intelligence. So this journey from Fortran to deep learning is nothing short of a miracle. It's magical, it's revolutionary. And this article in the Hindu newspaper and this book written by Professor V. Rajaraman actually names these 15 innovations which were absolutely essential in the development of the information and communication technology that we see today, that makes up our world. Right? We are surrounded by all of these devices. We are surrounded by information and communication technologies, and all of these things happen because of these 15 inventions. All right, makes sense? Now we'll come to the last topic, which is COVID-19 updates. Now I have shared the screenshots of these articles. I would like you guys to read on these screenshots. Article number 1 would talk about Sputnik 5, the vaccine that is created by Russia. It will talk in detail about Sputnik 5, what Sputnik 5 is made up of, how will it be successful, what are the scientific things, what are the major discoveries, or what are the major scientific goals that are being tried to achieve through this vaccine. So we'll talk about Sputnik 5, and should we be worried about it? Should we attach our hopes with Sputnik 5 that it's going to be a successful vaccine? It'll be explained in this article. Then this article, The Hindu Explains, will talk about long-term effects of COVID-19. As of now, we haven't focused our attention on long-term effects of COVID-19. We have just focused on COVID-19, the 14-day period through which the infection reaches its peak and then subsides, right? We are just focused on the 14-day period, but we are not talking about the long-term effects of COVID-19. Once you recover from COVID-19, still there are certain things that you guys need to be worried of. Okay, many people have there is this famous hospital in USA called Mayo Clinic. They have released a study which shows that some patients have shown, after recovering from COVID-19, some patients have shown damage to their brain cells, damage to their blood cells. Many people have shown damage to their lungs. Of course, lungs are definitely damaged, respiratory system and all that stuff. So there are long-term effects. Many people have reported that even after recovering from COVID-19, they feel fatigue, they feel muscle pain, joint pain and all that stuff. So long-term effects of COVID-19 is just not it's not just a respiratory disease. It affects other parts of your body as well. Okay, so these topics are discussed. Then there is this thing called Electronic Vaccine Intelligence Network. The thing is that vaccines, management of bulk of vaccines is a very tough job. Coronavirus vaccines would these vaccines would arrive in India in batches, in bulk batches, okay? Like 100 million doses of vaccine and all that stuff. Now to manage these 100 million doses, where these vaccines are going, in which cold storage these vaccines are being stored, or which people have been, which category of people have been given these doses, which category of people should be given these doses. So the entire management of coronavirus vaccine should be done online. India currently possesses electronic vaccine intelligence network. So what they're saying is that India should manage its vaccines, coronavirus vaccines, whenever it appears in India, India should manage coronavirus vaccine through this online platform called Electronic Vaccine Intelligence Network. This online platform would have information about in which places are coronavirus vaccines placed, where are different batches of coronavirus vaccines present. Like India has 25,000 cold storages. So in which cold storage, how much vaccine is there? Is there enough vaccine in Tamil Nadu? Because there are many candidates for receiving coronavirus vaccine in Tamil Nadu. So the entire management of coronavirus vaccine shall be done through Electronic Vaccine Intelligence Network. So read up on that also. And in the end, well, that's not, I mean, you don't need to read this. Russia has done a deal with Dr. Reddy laboratory to do phase 3 trials of Sputnik 5. So you can read up on this article. It's a very short article, but you'll get information about Russia's deal with Dr. Reddy lab in this article itself. All right. So read up on these articles because I'm going to ask questions. We are going to ask questions related to these articles as well in your prelims as well as mains test. It can happen. All right. So that's it from my side, guys. I hope you liked the lecture. I hope you understood each and every concept. If you still have any doubts, then please write to me those doubts. Otherwise, I'll see you next time with more stuff. Thank you.